filmmaker John Carpenter had begun the 1980s on a roll. In 1978, he had written and directed one of the most popular independent films of all time in Halloween, which scored him work in television, with the underrated thriller Someone Is Watching Me, with a head-turning performance from the excellent Lauren Hutton.
The least you can do is some heavy breathing, Stevie.
He then made the Elvis biopic, which had introduced him to his long-running collaborator Kurt Russell.
I got it all, man. I ought to be the happiest person in the world.
Carpenter and producer Debra Hill then kept scoring deals, working with Arco Embassy on The Fog and the extremely well-received and popular action sci-fi classic Escape from New York.
The president is dead. You got that? Somebody's had him for dinner.
Listen, if you get back in that glider, I'll shoot you down.
Next, John Carpenter was to hit the big time with a big-budget studio project at Universal, working on a reimagining of the Howard Hawks and Christian Nybey adaptation of John W. Campbell's Who Goes There, creating his own version of the sci-fi classic The Thing from Another World. John Carpenter's The Thing was released in 1982 to almost complete universal hatred from audiences and critics. During the box office failure of The Thing, Carpenter had been working with screenwriter Bill Lancaster on an adaptation of Stephen King's bestseller Firestarter, but the budget had ballooned due to heavy effects work on location in Tennessee, and a change in the guard at Universal made Carpenter's vision, which apparently had been set to star Richard Dreyfuss and the legendary Burt Lancaster, just too costly, and the project was put on hold, later to be made by director Mark L. Lester. And as fate would have it, Carpenter would go on to write the musical score for a remake of Firestarter in 2022, and his score was by far the best thing about that movie. It's funny how things happen in Hollywood.
Please, I can help you.
Liar, liar, pants on fire. I don't want to hurt anyone, but it feels kind of good.
With Firestarter on ice, and The Thing not doing so well, Carpenter needed a job, and producer and friend Richard Dreyfuss, who had worked with Tobe Hooper on Warner Brothers' well-received TV miniseries of Stephen King's Salem'slot, and whose namesake had been used for the character of Mrs. Dreyfuss in The Fog,
What's that now?
came to Carpenter with the unreleased manuscript for Stephen King's next book, Christine, which Dreyfuss had managed to get the film rights for before its release. And although Carpenter had reservations about how to adapt King's story of a killer car infested with the rotting ghost of its evil previous owner, Carpenter wasn't really in a situation to turn down the job.
And at the time, I had just made a film called The Thing, which had not done particularly well at the box office in the United States, and I had received a lot of criticism for being too violent, looky, grotesque, and so forth. So I was looking around for work, and I read this, and it's a haunted car story, but with really interesting characters. So I said, why not? I need a job, why not?
So in July 1983, after casting in Los Angeles and New York, John Carpenter's Christine went into production with a screenplay by Bill Phillips.
I think to some degree everybody can relate to what Arnie was going through. He was going through it a little more extreme than most people.
Who Universal had put with Carpenter on an earlier project to try and add some emotion into his work after they had called The Thing devoid of feeling, as Phillips had had some success in television writing Summer Solstice, which was the emotional and melancholic tale of an old couple reliving their youth, which I believe was actor Henry Fonda's final performance.
Wrinkles. Took me a long time to give you those. Let me enjoy them.
Christine was the first Carpenter movie I had seen without a screenplay by Carpenter himself, and for this reason, it's a movie that has often been classed as Carpenter's first film that he made as a director for hire in Hollywood. Christine also has the departure of director of photography Dean Cundy and his operator Clyde Bryan, who had worked with Carpenter on Escape from New York and The Thing, and of course Cundy had been with Carpenter since Halloween. So you might think that this may have been an uncomfortable shoot, going on without his usual crew, but Carpenter called on his director of photography from Elvis, the miniseries back in 1979, Donald M. Morgan, and along with Morgan came camera operator Chris Schweibert. And their work together on Christine is flawless, and the two would go on together to make Starman with Carpenter in the following year. Under Carpenter's direction, you really can see that he is his own master. Now, Dean Cundey is one of my favourite cinematographers, and his Panaglide work on Halloween is influential as it is revolutionary. But in Christine, Carpenter works with Morgan and Schweibert, and they do an amazing job. It's clear from this that Carpenter really is in charge of his own movies, because even without Cundey's skill...
Arnie! Hey, Arnie. Oh, shit.
Christine bears all the marks of Carpenter's widescreen cinematic Panavision style. Christine is a beautiful looking movie. It is a movie that is filled with camera movement that enhances the emotion in scenes. And some of the drifts on the Panaglide or Steadicam are phenomenal technical work.
I use Panaglide a lot in this, but it's not as obvious as you might think.
Real cute, huh? 3 on 1.
They started it.
I came to fall in love with Panaglide when I was making a picture earlier, Halloween, but I used it as a point of view. And in this movie, I used it a lot as a kind of a dolly situation. I kind of moved around a little bit and followed you guys and let you play the frame. And sometimes that can work.
What the hell do you want? Just looking at these shots proves for me that Carpenter is a master of cinema. His technical use of the wide screen that was influenced by his love of the westerns is often incredible.
If I'm gonna have to come in and get you, I'm gonna get you.
Carpenter's compositions are always beautiful to look at, and even though he worked on lower budgets for a lot of his work, Christine being made for just under $10 million all included, shows us that a lot can be achieved with technical knowledge and understanding of the history of cinema and style.
We did a lot of Steadicam here, I believe. We were also on a golf cart with a standing, or a trunk, actually trunk of a car, I apologize. Trunk of a car and driving around.
Yeah, this stuff here, I think this shot of him is great.
We were on a car.
And the point of view coming in is great, because it's Steadicam-ish, but it's different. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe it's because of the car thing.
It's not very often you can look blindly at a director's work and see without doubt that this is a certain filmmaker. But with Carpenter's run of movies throughout the late 70s, and for me up until the late 90s, it's always undoubtable that it's Carpenter at the helm. And for me, Christine, along with Assault on Precinct 13, shows Carpenter as a director that should be hailed along with the very best. In commentary of the film, Carpenter talks about shooting Christine in beautiful Pasadena, where he had previously shot Halloween, and the leafy suburbs are the perfect location to give the story a backdrop of small-town evil and madness that permeates all of Stephen King's work.
Like we're at South Pass now, as I recall, which I had fallen in love with when we shot Halloween there. It's just a beautiful... All the locations were picked, like you say in the beginning, to look like every town, not to look like necessarily Southern California that we couldn't get away from.
I think Carpenter's work on Halloween directly influenced Christine, because they both deal with the same characters. Both movies are about teenagers going through that awkward stage of transition into sexual relationships and growing up.
Now that we're gonna be seniors, I figured it's about time that we got you laid. Well, what about Gail Justin, huh?
Well, you could ask Dick Baxter. He'd go out with you.
I'd rather go out with Ben Tramer.
Ben Tramer? I knew it!
Screenwriter Bill Phillips puts it perfectly when he tells us what Christine is about.
I think one of the reasons the film has survived is that we stayed with universal themes: love, jealousy.
I mean, you care more about that car than you care about me.
Ugliness, beauty.
You're not ugly, Arnie. I know what I am.
And we stayed away from some of the very specific things that could have dated the film.
The themes of the film are all relatable, and at its heart, Christine is a love story that is driven by the film's performances.
Maybe it's just that for the first time in my life, I found something that's uglier than me.
There really are only a couple of action set pieces in the film, and the film relies on its great performances and relatable characters.
Sonny, you ever owned a car before?
I think this is one of Christine's greatest strengths. Even the small parts of the film are cast with great character actors such as Roberts Blossom, Harry Dean Stanton, Christine Belford, and who can forget the great character actor Robert Prosky as the unforgettable Darnell.
I know a creep when I see one. I think I'm looking at one right now.
Every role is filled with talent, and Christine is one heck of a strong cast, and that gives this film about a killer car a grounding in reality. But it's a reality that never takes itself too seriously, and that for me is also part of Christine's allure. I mean, how seriously can you take a film about a killer car?
There was also, it seemed to me like there's a tonal difference between the book and the film. I felt like the film had more of a sense of humor about itself, or tongue-in-cheekness about itself.
Body wrapped.
Hi, Janet.
Whereas I felt like what really worked for me in the movie, and one of the things I really liked in the movie, is the movie's got a playfulness.
Scout's honor. Her name's Christine.
I like that.
Because, okay, you know, it's a haunted car, so you could, how serious you're going to get about that.
You can't get too grim about that.
But that, I thought, really worked for the film.
Is that you, Cunningham?
You know, if we'd said, oh, what a scary thing this is, I think he would have kind of rolled their eyes and gone, ah, come on.
Hey, you ain't mad, are you?
But because it was playful, you could let yourself then get sucked into how scary it could be, too.
I'll have to think about it.
But don't think about it too long. I'll throw you out your ass.
But Carpenter kept a loose, fun set while making the film, and this shows in the performances. Carpenter is a filmmaker who I think knows how to work hard. After all of his films are mostly edited, written and scored by the man himself. But in his heart, Carpenter wants his audiences to have fun, just like he did at the movies when he was a kid. And since I first saw it, I've always had fun with John Carpenter's Christine.
You're going to have fun in the sense of a haunted house show or a roller coaster type situation. You're going to have a thrill. It's that kind of thing. And it's a great date movie. You get to cuddle with your girl.
Okay. So we got the old rust bucket tonight.
I'm gonna watch what you call my car. It's real sensitive.
Back to its love story. On a personal note, I think the power of Christine lies at its heart of Arnie falling in love with Christine, and at first, she makes his life better. He gets the girl, he becomes cooler, he begins to stand up for himself. But at what price does Christine's love come? We've all been in love with the wrong person at some point, but sometimes love makes us blind to any negative outside influences, and that is what happens to Arnie.
I never did quite figure out, although I know you played it as an actor and it was in the script, why he fell in love with this piece of shit.
Yeah, I just took it on faith. You know, I took it, I mean, you know, for me it's the way, you know, you might fall in love with a woman and, you know, everybody else might look at you and go, why her?
Yeah.
And you just, there's something chemical.
Come on, baby, please. It's all right. Everything is the same.
Love is the strongest emotion, and Arnie falls for the wrong girl, and it changes his life because of it. He loses his best friends, his family, and even loses himself. A tragic love story, if ever I saw one.
Really?
Cut it out.
Don't like me slapping your girl?
And that for me is one of the most relatable things about Christine. Love can be the devil and really lift you to the highest heights, but then really bring you down with a wet splat on the concrete.
Let me tell you a little something about love, Dennis. It has a voracious appetite. It eats everything.
If we dig deep into Christine, there are many themes. American car culture, high school culture and bullying, the war at home, of being independent from your parents, and of course, falling in love for the first time. We've all been a version of Arnie at a certain point in our lives. And even though Christine is evil, she believes in Arnie, and he believes in Christine. They love each other, and together they are almost unstoppable, and that is the true power of love.
You know, when someone believes in you, man, you can do anything, any f***ing thing in the entire universe, and when you believe right back in that someone, then watch out, world!
After all, we must remember, it is Arnie's love and affection for the car that revives it back to its former glory. We must not forget that Christine lay in wait for Arnie, and he revived her in the same way that she affects him, making him what he wants to be, cool and at the top of the food chain. But when Christine kills the bullies, She's really got Arnie's back. It's love. But then she becomes green with jealousy and all hell breaks loose, leading us to the film's gripping, climactic final sequence. Christine has always been a big part of my life, and one of my all-time favourite horror movies. I have the original UK quad poster from 1983, and it has pride of place in the house. When I was a kid, my father built and restored vintage cars, and was a subscriber to Street Machine magazine and had flip books full of cut-out cars, and we went to hundreds of car shows together. He rebuilt a Ford Pop and a Morris Minor pickup from 1965, and Christine was a movie that he enjoyed too because he loved the car. Christine is a 1958 Plymouth Fury. Stephen King said he chose the car for the story because he always felt it didn't get as much love as, say, the Mustangs or the Chevys, so it was a bit like Arnie Cunningham. Christine was a bit of a loner too. I'll never forget reading Stephen King's book for a book report in school and sitting down with my dad and drawing a picture of Christine for the report's cover. Great times. So in terms of my own personal cinematic journey with Christine, it will always have great memories for me, and I'm really thankful for that.
Brand new she was. She had the smell of a brand new car. That's just about the finest smell in the world.
I think to sum up, I can see that Christine is one of my all-time favorite John Carpenter movies, and definitely up there with the best adaptations of Stephen King's work. I know that is definitely debatable amongst fans, and rightly so, but for me at least, it's a beauty. It's a work with great relatable characters, a great soundtrack. Back when I saw John Carpenter live, he ended the set with a great rocking rendition of Christine's music, and the place erupted into applause, and it was fantastic. But most of all, I think Christine is one of Carpenter's most accomplished works of cinematography. The movement in the film is flawless, and the camera always moves for a reason. The movement gives the work a dreamlike quality which works for me incredibly well in creating this teenage fantasy or nightmarish world of high school bullies, jealousy, love, lust, and revenge. And Christine works because of its cinematic depth and incredible craftsmanship. I think Christine is close to being a perfect horror movie. So in the words of Carpenter himself,
there's only one thing I want to leave you with. Please, please, drive carefully. Going home, Christine is out there.
Thanks for watching my take on John Carpenter's Christine, a movie that means a great deal to me. If you would like to see more from me about Carpenter and other filmmakers, please remember to like and subscribe. And as always, thank you all so much for listening. It's been a blast to talk about this one.